Chris, I'd like to start with you, and let me just give some facts out here. As we know already, the state is facing a $3 billion budget shortfall. And right now, they have predicted that about 28,000 Maryland jobs will be lost because of the Trump administration's reduction of employees at the federal level. And now it looks like we're now looking at maybe another, 3,000 or 4,000 that are laid off because of the shutdown. How does that play into Maryland politics?
A lot of this depends on what county you're in. Obviously, in Maryland, you're going to get impacted differently by the federal workforce. When initially there were discussions about federal workforce being laid off in Queen Anne's County, we take a look at it. We have about less than 1,000 federal workers, and tend to be with agencies that we don't think are going to be impacted. So, from Queen Anne's County's perspective, we feel like we're financially in a good position to sort of weather a storm on that issue. When it comes to the government shutdowns and the impact that's going to have, unfortunately, I think the government shutdowns a lot of times is just time for a lot of the federal politicians to get on their soapboxes and maybe overreact a little bit. Not all shutdowns are a financial Armageddon. Some are, right? But government shutdowns, they vary, right? That can be that friend that shows up drunk at 2 a.m. If he just spends the night, it's annoying. If he's there for a month, you're calling the cops and you're changing the locks, right? It's a much different outcome. And, before today, we've had 21 different shutdowns since 1976. Plenty of blame to go around on both parties, although when the shutdown comes, each party gets to pick who's supposed to be responsible for this. This is all their faults at the federal government level for allowing this to continually happen, Democrat and Republican. That's my opinion on it. So let's look at how these play out. If you look at a short-term shutdown, let's say, think 1995, right? Like a 5-day shutdown, GDP dip of 0.02%, not that much. There was about $200 million lost, but most of that was recovered. In Maryland, you saw about $700,000 a day in taxes. Again, mostly recovered. It's like a hangover that you cure with Gatorade. Not that big of a deal. You get to the 2 to 3 week shutdowns, thinking about October of 2013, the Obamacare standoff. You got 16 days. Parks are closed. Pandas are locked up at the zoo. The nation hit $24 billion in lost output there. Maryland's economic bleed was $10 to $13 million a day. That you don't entirely recover from, and there's an impact on the consumer confidence. But then we get to the real bad ones, right? When these things go over a month, that's where the showdowns, they go from sort of your policy porn to an economic arson, and you're really having a negative impact on the economy. Last time we had December 2018 to January 2019, national GDP, $11 billion hit. Maryland was losing $13.2 million a day. Those are self-inflicted wounds that we didn't recover from. We had a lot of federal contracts and projects that went away. They got ghosted because the money was gone. So I think it all depends on, is this something that we wrap up this week or early next week? Okay, it was annoyance. We'll move on. More long-term, significant impact for Maryland.
Len, you might have a different perspective.
Well, I think my opinion aligns largely with Chris's, but I also think you have to put it in a much larger perspective. This is merely one leg of a three-legged stool. We now have a triple threat now facing Maryland's economy and our fiscal outlook. One is the federal government shutdown, which, as you pointed out, is going to result in about $700,000 in lost revenue, tax revenue on a daily basis, according to figures provided by the governor's office and the comptroller's office yesterday. It's going to result in a loss of about $13 million conservatively in daily economic activity, because those people who aren't going to work aren't putting money back into the economy in the same rhythm that they otherwise would. They're not shopping in restaurants. They're not, taking their clothes to the dry cleaners, and those local merchants in turn aren't investing in other local businesses and putting money back. So it's a snowball effect. So you have $700,000 in lost revenue, $13 million in lost economic activity. But beyond that, even if we assume that this is a short-term thing and that they will grudgingly come to some sort of an agreement in the next 2 to 3 days and kick the can down the road, this is happening in the middle of, as you said, a larger retrenchment of the federal government and the federal workforce, where Maryland is on the bleeding edge of that. We've already lost upwards of 13,000 jobs, according to a report in August. And when all this is said and done, we'll be well above that number. And those jobs are not going to come back anytime soon, if ever. And with that comes lost revenue. With that comes lost consumer spending, small business support, community investment, tax revenue for schools, police, healthcare, and other essential priorities. And on top of that, we have an administration that has singled out the state of Maryland for through cuts in grants for universities, retrenchments at federal facilities like the National Institutes of Health. So this is a triple threat. And the aggregate effect of this is to not only put our spending priorities in dire jeopardy, but it also makes Maryland a fundamentally less stable place for private sector investment. Because as Chris knows, money goes where it's wanted, and money seeks stability and predictability. And right now, Maryland doesn't offer that. And so I think it really becomes more incumbent than ever before on our governor and on the General Assembly to pursue fiscal and economic policies that reward private sector investment and entrepreneurship, as opposed to the way we have viewed the private sector in years and decades gone by, which is essentially as an ATM machine for whatever social priorities we valued at that moment in time. So it's going to be a challenge, and that challenge is augmented in 2027 because, as Chris knows, we are going to have a massive blueprint bill due. And I think, Chris, it's what, $3 billion?
Yeah.
So
and the state's not prepared for it.
right. We're already $3 billion in the hole trying to figure out a way to pay for the blueprint. And now we're seeing severe rollbacks, or at least the threat of rollbacks, in our spending pattern and in our economic base. So it's a mess.
Chris, what are the political consequences for this? I mean, do you feel like Westmore is going to have to kind of own up to a lot of this, or do you feel like there's going to be such a poor reaction to this, the Trump approach to this, that the Republicans lose out?
I think you're going to see what we see with all issues these days, where people are going to become entrenched with their party, and anything their party does is gold, and what the other party does is an attack on the very core of America. And me, speaking as a Republican, let me just say, since I'm more of a moderate Republican, I think that's crap on both sides. I think there is responsibility that goes around. And I think in Maryland, I saw Governor Moore's press conference, I think it was this morning, about the government shutdowns. And to me, it was a little bit lackluster, an opportunity to attack the president. But we know in our own personal budgets that we have to save, because you don't know when that water heater is going to go up or the car transmission is going to go out, and you need to be able to weather those economic storms. Maryland's not ready for the water heater to go out or the transmission, right? And so when these things happen, when forces external to Maryland occur, we're not ready to be able to weather those storms. And I think that's something that they really need to focus on with this next session of the General Assembly, is getting Maryland's house in order.
Len, final words?
I think the political consequences are going to be limited because we live in a non-competitive political state. We have 7 of our 8 members of our congressional delegation are represented by Democrats in seats that range from moderately safe for Democrats to mortal locks for Democrats. Andy Harris, barring a major redistricting, is a mortal lock on the Republican side. And 34 of the, I think at last count, 37 of the total 47 legislative districts in the state of Maryland are single-party legislative districts. So, which means that they are either very safe Democrat or very safe Republican. And the only way an incumbent lawmaker gets bounced is in a party primary by someone to his or her left or right, depending on the party affiliation. So, I think their fiscal consequences are going to be significant. I think we have the opportunity here to make some really profound economic decisions to put our state in a more competitive private sector posture. But the political ramifications and fallout in 2026 are going to be minimal, if not virtually non-existent. And I think that's just a not so great commentary on our political culture here in Maryland.
Hey, Chris, let's move on to hot takes. What got your attention this week?
Yeah, I'm going to do a self-indulgent political hot take here. Queen Anne's County has just earned a AAA bond rating, AAA. So we've got it from Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor. First one on the Eastern Shore to be able to get that. Very rare for a small rural county to have that kind of economic standing. It's great because we can obviously invest infrastructure at lower cost for the citizens. But for me, what I'm most proud of is not what the commissioners has done. It's the citizens of Queen Anne's County putting faith in us, and it's all of the excellent people that work for Queen Anne's County. Right at the director level, we ask them to do one thing, and that is deliver efficient services to the citizens of Queen Anne's County. We're not doing this from a political party ideology way. It's how do we do good governance, not what is sort of politically expedient. And I think that's paid off in the fact that we're able to weather economic storms. And the AAA bond rating, I think, is a great indicator of how well those policies have taken effect. Maybe the state and the federal government can learn a little bit from little old Queen Anne's County.
And Len?
I salute Chris and his colleagues on the Queen Anne's County Commission for their sound fiscal stewardship. That is quite an achievement for a small rural county, and it really speaks well to the responsible manner in which you have managed the taxpayer purse. So well done, Chris. I want to single out my dear friend and former employee and protege, Manny Welsh, who I had the privilege of hiring about a decade ago because I value hiring people who are smarter and quicker and better than I am, which admittedly is not the highest bar in the world to clear. But Manny is he's not only one of the very smartest, brightest lights in state government, he goes about his work with an integrity that is often sorely lacking in the graded politics of the moment. This past week, he was named the Chief Administrative Officer of the Maryland State Government by Governor Wes Moore. It is a well-deserved promotion, a well-deserved expansion of his existing state portfolio, and the governor deserves commendation for recognizing talent and rewarding talent when he sees it.
As a Republican, if I can say, I agree with Len on that. Manny is a tremendous public servant. Really, that is one part about Governor Moore's administration that gives me hope, is people like Manny in there.
Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.